We are now live. Hey everyone, welcome to our podcast.
Good morning.
Oh, and as usual, I gotta mute my my repetitive YouTube screen because then I get an echo. So there we go. Hey, so how's everyone doing? Greg and I are just off of a fun weekend at WordCamp LA, and we'll get a little bit into that. And so we may be a little bit tired, even though it's 3 days later, but WordCamps can be very, very busy times. So hey, I'm Mark. I'm the operations manager for ServerPress. And with me, as always, is my cohort, Greg. How you doing, Greg?
I'm doing great. And I'm Greg Franklin with ServerPress and doing most of the support.
Cool. So a little bit of the usual chat guidelines, which I've already posted. Please, 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 if you're going to chat, be civil and respectful. Remember, there are human beings behind the keyboards and the cameras. Be helpful if you can, and feel free to pitch in. This is a pretty open forum, and we all try to help each other out. So this is all about community. That's why we're in WordPress, and ServerPress, our philosophy is very community oriented, and so this is all about helping each other out to make everyone's lives a little easier and better. And of course, if there's anything that we feel is inappropriate, we reserve the right to delete the comments and boot someone from the chat if these rules are not followed. Pretty basic, pretty simple. In other words, just be nice to each other. First bit of news is that 3.9.2 desktop server is out and official, and so far we have had some pretty good responses from it. In it, I think the biggest addition that was a big deal to me was the ability to do multiple deletes of websites.
I
so
agree.
That's pretty cool. I think that's something that I think a lot of people have been waiting for a long time. And Steve snuck it in on us and didn't even tell us he was going to do it until we saw it. So that was pretty cool.
I was thrilled.
Yeah, yeah. I think you were the one that pointed it out to me, Greg. You're like, oh, look what Steve did. So
yeah,
that was cool. There is also a new version of Gutenberg. If you're into Gutenberg, I don't know if you've heard of it. There's not really much buzz about it going on. What do you have to say about Gutenberg, Greg? Have you heard of it?
Oh yeah, constantly. And it was a big topic once again at the there was a panel I joined on, I think it was Sunday, and it was good. It was a good panel. It's definitely Gutenberg is coming. And it has a ton of potential, but unfortunately at this time, there's still some issues with it. But it's getting better and better. If you get a chance, give it a shot, give it a try.
Cool. And Greg, I don't know if you're aware that you're already sharing your screen, so if you want to make sure that...
yeah, I was showing...
okay, you were showing the WordCamp LA schedule. Cool. I just wanted to make sure, you know.
Yeah.
Because didn't want you to have all your banking information for everyone to see. Or like that. So
I'm just sharing my banking with everyone.
Yeah, well, and you can all share your banking with us too, and we won't complain. Anyway,
so there's a link. I mean, I'm sharing right now. We have a blueprint to make it easy for people to try Gutenberg out, and it goes. And if you're on the premium version, and you have DSCLI turned on, you can drop this blueprint into your blueprints folder and create a site using that blueprint, and it'll go fetch the latest version so that you're always working with the latest version of Gutenberg and seeing what all those modules do and how they work.
And we'll have a link for that. I just wanted to bring up the show notes. I know we are behind on that. We actually have them all written up and ready to go. And we have Erin, who is one of our service people. She is now starting to do the show notes after the shows, so they will get up much quicker than they have been. So be on the lookout for that. And that'll have links and things like that in there so you can get access to these things like the Gutenberg blueprint. So as I mentioned, we got back from WordCamp LAX. What was your big takeaway, Greg, from LAX?
It was run really, really well. A gentleman named Thomas ran it this year. He was the lead, and everybody just did really well. I don't think there was a single glitch, and everything ran very, very well. The weather was great. The presentations were fantastic, and I know you and I have a tendency to hang out in what I guess they call the hallway track, which is hanging out and talking to all kinds of other like-minded people at WordPress, and we got to see some great friends. John Brown was there, and he's doing very well. And that's that. I guess that was the big takeaway, was that the camp ran very, very smoothly.
It was very smooth, and we did the beginner workshop on Friday. And when I say we, Greg actually did the desktop server portion of it. He handled it very well. We had very good response from that as well. It was a packed room, and it seemed like that day just went by way too fast. And even though it was a beginner workshop, a couple of us who have been around for a long time walked out and said, "Oh, I just learned something today." So that was kind of cool too. I don't know if that happened with you, Greg, but it certainly happened with me. And I was talking to Josh from An Honest Host, and he said the same thing. He said, "Oh, I didn't know that." Bridget had done a presentation, and we both had learned something about Twitter that we didn't know. So,
and I do want to thank Josh and Various, who came along and helped kind of support the whole class. We, as ServerPress, we generally on these beginner tracks, we kind of are the support for the whole thing. We'll run around and help people with any issues and getting people on the network and Wi-Fi and get desktop servers set up. So it's great, and I really appreciated their help.
And Christina Hills also, who really kind of put the whole thing together, right? She did a really good job.
Yes,
yeah.
She did great.
So shout out to her as well. So it was a really, really good WordCamp. If we didn't see you there and you were there, I'm sorry we didn't see you. We try to interact with as many people as we can when we go to WordCamps. So try to find us at the next one. I know I'll be at WordCamp US, and I think a couple others. Oh, Riverside is coming up too. So of course we'll be at Riverside. So, yeah, definitely. So if you haven't been to a WordCamp, get yourself to a WordCamp. You'll never find a bigger group of more helpful people anywhere than at a WordCamp.
And the price is unbelievable. You get lunch both days. You get all these classes for teaching and for education, and a T-shirt normally, and it's $40. It's unbelievable.
It's crazy
inexpensive. If you've ever been to any other kind of seminars or events, they're usually in the thousands. So this is pretty remarkable.
And you generally get free coffee and free lunch too, or included. I guess not included.
Yeah.
All right. So, go ahead, Greg.
I was going to also mention, if you they love speakers, so if you ever get a chance, go ahead and submit to speak, and you can present on almost anything. Yeah. One of the really popular presentations at this LAX one was also a gentleman went through 50 things about WordPress, and it was just 50 little tips about WordPress, everything. It was just a wide range, and it was very popular and very well received. So even if you're fairly new to WordPress, you could actually speak at one of these WordCamps.
Yeah, and no speaking experience is required. All you need is just a little bit of nerve to be able to get up in front of a bunch of people and imagine them in their underwear, I guess. I don't know. And that's what they say you have to do in order to publicly speak. And so if you can do that, and you have something to share, and everybody has something to share, it's worthwhile, and it's a really good growing experience. If you've never publicly spoken, you'll find that you'll find lots of supportive people there. So let's get into the preferences file. Greg, tell us about the preferences file.
Okay, cool. So you may not have heard of the preferences file, but the preferences file is a file that lives within Desktop Server. And it's kind of a settings file, an index file, and I'm going to open one up and let you take a look at it. But it's written in what they call JSON. So it's a data file that's broken up into a specific layout. And Mark and I are working on two different systems today. I'm on a Windows machine. He's on a Mac. So we're going to kind of show you where these files can be found, where this file is located on the system. It is a hidden file, so it's something that you might not have seen because you may not have hidden files turned on. And it's great to know about this file because there's things you can do with the file. And that's what we're going to kind of walk through today, is what you can do with the file, if there's a problem with the file, anything like that. So I'm going to start off with showing you where you can find this file on a Windows machine. So I'm going to open up my File Explorer. And then if you go to this PC or to your C drive, you will find that there's a folder called Program Data. If you don't see this, it's because it's hidden. And to unhide it, you can come up to what they call the ribbon, and you'll have a tab that's called View. And in the view, over here on the right, you'll see 3 checkboxes. The one that says Hidden Item is the one you would want to check. In fact, if I turn that off, you'll see the program data file disappears. I'm going to go ahead and turn it back on. And there we go, it comes right back. So if I open that program data file up and then go into the desktop server folder, you're going to see a com.serverpress.desktopserver.json file. This is the preferences file. So I'm going to turn this over to Mark now and have him show you where this is located and how to view it on a Mac.
All right, first thing I need to do is share my screen. Whoa. All right, and you're going to see a bunch of ridiculousness for a second, and I apologize for that. There we go. So on the Mac, you can do it one of 2 ways. And I have to admit, I'm going to tell you right now, Google is your friend. Every time that I have to remember how to do this, I will click on, I will go into Google to remember how to show my hidden files. Now, I do tend to be a command line person. So if I go into my command line here, I can just type in defaults write com.apple.finder Apple, oops, and it has to be, it is case sensitive on a Mac. So show all files, yes. And so that will make it so that you can see everything.
You'll have to relaunch your Finder.
And then you have to relaunch your Finder. Okay, so now I'll relaunch my Finder. And where you're going to find it is in where is it, Greg? I always
Actually,
forget.
how I usually do is up at the top, go to Go.
You go to Go, and then you go
Computer.
to, yeah, go to Folder, don't you?
No, go to Computer. Sorry.
No, that was my bad. Go to Computer,
And then it's the primary drive. In your case, it's Macintosh HD. So whatever the person's primary drive is. And then you can see, we can already see that your hidden files are showing. It's those lightly colored ones.
Right.
And then you're going to go into Users and Shared.
Now, for those of you that are watching me do this rather clumsily, I'm going to show you and then here is your folder right here, or your preferences file. So I want to show you something really quickly, which is how I usually remind myself how to do this. Is I usually go to, where is the desktop server preferences file on Mac? And there we have a beautiful little, as you can see, I've opened it several times, the document on how to do all that. And this also shows you how to make backups of your preferences file, and we have one for both Mac and for Windows. And these links will also be in the show notes, because this documentation is very valuable even to people like me, because I go back and forth between Mac and Windows so often that, and I'm of an age where I forget things very regularly. So I have to go back and look at our own references quite often. So, and now I will stop sharing my screen.
Well, let's show one other thing, if you don't
okay,
mind.
sure.
Go back to your
Now,
screen where the
are you
preferences
seeing,
file is.
you know what you guys are seeing? You guys have all seen Greg this whole time.
Oh, you weren't sharing?
Well, I was sharing my screen. I may have to go back and edit this video to show my screen and not the other. But I think what I did was there's an option here where I have to present myself to everyone. And Greg, you're looking good. Peter says you're looking good. And here's
thanks.
So, so there's my preferences file. Okay, you can see it now. And I do apologize. I need to remember to click on the person who's doing the presenting from within Google Hangouts and do that, which I think is a little bit clunky, but that's just my opinion. And so what Greg had me do just a minute ago was went to go. I'm going to do this again. And then I go down to
computer.
Computer. And then my Macintosh hard drive, users, Mark. And
nope,
like he said,
sorry. Go back to shared.
Shared, I'm sorry, shared. And then here is my desktop server preferences file. And you can see that it's a hidden file. And so we will put the command once again. And once again, these are things you can Google, how to show your hidden files in Mac. Like I said, I have to do it whenever, well, I usually have to do it every time that I get a new Mac, which is once in a blue moon. And then I always have my hidden files shown. But sometimes when we walk customers through it, I have to look it up as well. So that's a little known secret, is that we actually have to use Google when we help our customers. At least I do. So, and what were you going to have me show, Greg?
In that Finder window, if you do Command Shift period, it turns off the hidden files in your case, and if you hit it again, it'll show the hidden files. So it's a little keystroke method.
That's right.
That you can use versus having to do it through the terminal.
Right. So if I go to my Finder window and I go back to that, well, let's see here. And if I do Command Shift period.
Correct.
Command Shift period, you'll see they disappear. So that is a pretty quick keystroke. And I tend to, like I said, I tend to be a command line person. I like to type everything, which is not always the fastest way to do things. And with that, I am going to let Greg take back over after you see all my screens. And now Greg should be presenting.
Okay. You can see my screen, correct, Mark?
I can, yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the preferences file now, and you can open it up with any text editor that you'd like. So we're going to open that right there. This happens to be Notepad++ on my Windows machine. On the Mac, I use Wrangler, but you can, again, use anything that you'd like. And if we work down, we're going to work down the list. And the first thing it's going to tell you is what version you're running. So it says up here 392 in my case, and what edition. So it'll say either premium or limited. Below that is the web owner. If you're on Windows, the web owner is always going to be blank. If you're on a Mac, it's going to actually username, which is the connection to MySQL, the server. And it's root. It's always going to be root, and we do not give it a password, so it's blank. Mark had mentioned to me before this presentation to always remind folks, never change this, never change your password in your MySQL. It can actually break everything, break all your sites all at once. And then below that, on line 7 here, you can see it says browser, and it says Safari. This is one of the things that you can do with the preferences file, and that is come in and change the browser on a Mac. On a Windows machine, you change it within Windows. Mark, what is the easy way to do that in Windows?
I'm sorry, to do what now?
To be able to change the browser.
Okay, so in Windows 10, probably the fastest way is if you just click on the window down at the bottom and tell Cortana, say, browser default. It's a system setting, and you go into the system setting, and there's an option there to change your default browser.
Okay, terrific.
And it's really easy and quick. So if you have Internet Explorer or Firefox as your option, you just click on it, and then it becomes your default.
In Mac, you'll just come in here, and you can change this to Chrome. You can change it to Firefox, whatever you'd like. And that way, whenever you open up, if you click on the Sites button in Desktop Server, it's going to open it up in Chrome. Or if you visit the site, it'll always open it up Chrome. The next one down is the TLD, which stands for Top Level Domain. And this is going to be the extension that gets added to the end of the name of the site that you're creating. So if you created a site, www.example. And it would be .dev.cc. You could change this if you want to, and sometimes many people will. They'll change it to something like local or test. It's probably not a good idea to name it something that's an actual live domain, so we wouldn't recommend putting .com or .edu or .org, but a non-used name you could do. Now, we own .dev.cc, and we route it to localhost, and because we own it, it'll never change. We have control. This was a change that happened a while back. We used to use .dev, but Google actually owns .dev, and they were doing some forcing of HTTPS, and they were doing some other things. And so we went ahead and changed it to .dev.cc by default, and that's what ours is set at. It is something you can change if you'd like, but .dev.cc works really well. Underneath that is our DS plugins. Whatever plugins you've activated will show up in this list, and they're going to show what the paths are to them. So that's all this is. I want to mention here, every once in a while we'll have a support issue where someone might have downloaded a plugin from our GitHub directly. And when they do, it may have the word master added to the end of it. And if it does, and you had an older version, it can cause it not to work because the paths wouldn't be correct, because it would actually say something like admin-color-bar-master. So if you run into that kind of a problem, you could come in and check your preferences file. And if you find the case that your file that you've put into the DS plugins folder says master, you could do one of two things. You could either rename that folder from -master to removing the master, or come into the preference file and add -master to the path. So that's one way to handle that. Coming down a little bit further, we have our desktop path. We just keep track of that. We keep track of the documents path. And then this is where it becomes very important. So we have you'll see it says sites. And we have what are called blocks. So these blocks make up a website that you create. So when you create a site, it's going to create the name. In this case, we've got peddlingpedals.dev.cc. And then it's going to have the site name, same thing basically. And then it's going to show the path where it's being saved on your system. Whenever you start up Desktop Server, let's bring this over here, and we say create a new site, right here where the site root is going to be the path. And you get to pick that and browse to where you'd like that site path to be. And this, in the preferences file, that is being reflected. And that's why I mentioned this is kind of an index of all of your sites, because each site gets put in here and it shows its name, its path. The IP address is always going to be 127.0.01, which is localhost, which is your local machine. And then it's going to show you the database name, the database user, and the database password. Each one of those gets collected and put in here because that's when it's making the connection to your MySQL database. And you can see each one of these the structure is exactly the same for each block. Coming down. Okay. And then let's talk about the preferences file. You don't want to make any changes to the preferences file unless the services in Desktop Server have been stopped, because if you do, they won't be saved. So I'm going to actually give you an example of that so you can see this actually happen. So right now, my desktop server is running. And if I come in and I change Safari to Chrome and then save that, thinking I've saved it, but then if I come in and I stop desktop server, we'll say stop, next. And then we'll close it. Right away, this pops up and says, hey, wait a minute. Something changed it. Can we, reload it? If I say yes, look at it, converts right back to Safari. And that's because desktop server has to be closed because desktop server is holding this file. It's basically got a lock on this file. And so if you make changes to that while it's in a locked state, it will not retain them. It won't stay. So always be sure that desktop server has been closed.
And that the web services have been stopped.
Yes. Yes. Always, always, always. And it's easy to do, to check. You can actually go into your task manager on Windows and check and see if the Apache server is running. So you're looking for Apache, or if you're, or MySQL, both of those would be showing up in this list. On the Mac, you would use something called Activity Monitor, which is under Utilities, and you can check in there to see if it's running. Either one of those will solve that problem. Okay, so now that I've turned that off, I'm actually going to change this to Chrome now, so you can actually see that it will save after. Now save this, and let's open up Desktop Server again. Next. And you can see once again it jumped up and said, has it been modified again? And we say yes, and this time Chrome stayed. Okay, so the other thing I want to mention is this file is fairly important to your overall desktop server working properly. So it's possibly, or really it is, a good idea to back it up. And you can back it up by either copying it, or one of the things that you can do is there is a plugin that we offer now called Database Archive. And what Database Archive does is two things. It backs up your databases and it backs up the preferences file. And to turn that on, it should be in the premium version. You'll see that under Database Archive here. Actually, Mark, Database Archive, is it only in the premium version? I'm trying to remember.
The Database Archive utility is also in the
is in the limited?
In the limited edition, correct.
Okay, excellent, excellent. So it can definitely back up both the databases and your preferences file. Let me show you where that is. So I'm going to go ahead. Let's see. Let's go back. Let's go to sites. So you can go into any of your sites into the dashboard. And then go into Tools, and you'll see DS Database Archive. And you can set how often you want this to occur. So you can do it once a day, every day, what time, a single file, and then where you want it to store it. So in my case, it's in my users Greg folder. Let's go there. Users Greg. And there it is, Desktop Server Archive. And this is where your preferences file gets backed up. A bunch of you can see all my databases are backed up here. I'm trying to find that preferences file. I know it's in here. I just have way too many. There it is. Okay, so there it is backed up. So if you ever have one get damaged or anything like that, we can of course replace that with that. Let's see. So I do get support issues sometimes where a preferences file has gotten damaged. And by damaged, it could be that the file no longer has data sites in it. It could be completely empty. And just kind of show you what that looks like, let's go ahead and let's take this all out. I think that's correct. Actually, you know what I forgot to do? I'm trying to make an edit and I have not stopped the services. And close. Okay. Yeah, I know. Let's back up. Okay, so let's save that. And let's open up the desktop server. So now you'll see, I'm getting a gray sites button. I can no longer click on it. And that's because there's no sites in our preferences file. So if somehow your preferences file got damaged, it could present you with an issue like this where you see no sites. You'll also see that nothing is showing up and you're not able to choose remove, copy, or move because there's just nothing available. So that could be a case. I'm going to show you another example of a damaged preferences file. We're going to say stop again. Close. So another thing that can happen is if you do come in and make a change inside the preferences file and you're on a Mac and you happen to use the text editor, sometimes the text editor will change the quotes to what they call smart quotes or curly quotes, and that can cause an issue with your preferences file. I think even a single quote can cause a problem. So we're going to try that right now. I'm going to save this because I want you to see what the error message looks like and that you'll recognize it and go, oh, I know what the problem is, and go back in and change that. So let's take a look now and see if this is going to give us an error message. And sure enough, there it is. Whoops. Where did it go? Let's try that again. Sorry, for some reason not getting that error back up again. It's weird, it like reduced it to something very small. Okay. I don't know what's going on there. Okay, so we're going to go fix this just so it comes back up again. And that's not going to work because remember, we've got to stop it. So in this case, I can't get back in. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the task manager to close.
Oh, right. Because desktop server, just to clarify, desktop server won't open now because the preferences file is messed up.
Yep.
So Greg is checking in the task manager to make sure that none of the Apache services or MySQL services are running.
Okay, now that I've fixed it again, we're back up and running again. Okay, the other thing I was going to show you is if for some reason it gets damaged and you do need to rebuild your sites, you can actually do it quite easily. So if the site was not here, you could open up where your sites, the files of the sites, the site root are stored. And depending on how you've set that, by default, it's documents, websites. So that's where we are right here. And if you go inside, you could actually just copy another one. Come on. You can copy a previous one. Or if you don't have one, you can go ahead and go into Desktop Server and create a new site so that it gets written. And then you can simply copy, for example, this rasdev right here, copy that. And if we went, we would just replace each of the 3 places. So here, site name, and then to get the DB name and username, we can go inside and go to the WP config file. That's going to have it for you. And it's going to have it under DB name. Let's come back to DB name. And the username is always the same as the database name. So you can just literally cut and paste twice, there and then come back and get the password. And then save it. And that would get you back to your sites, getting the sites recreated again. I think that's pretty much all of the support issues that can happen with the preferences file. So I think at this point, unless, is there anything I missed, Mark?
No, I don't think so. You kind of went through everything as far as how each block is created and what it represents.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's obviously a very important file. It's kind of like the control center for desktop server. And so if there's ever a problem with it, it can wreak havoc. If you ever do have to go in and manually edit this file, I would always say make a backup, make a backup, make a backup. But I think that you covered everything. And I would also like to say that we have both Dave and Steve online right now. And so Dave and Steve are like the geniuses at ServerPress. And if you guys have any questions for them, now's the time to ask, because it's a golden opportunity to have them answer your questions.
So I think at this point we're ready to answer any questions.
Yeah, we are ready to answer questions. So Peter asks, could you just replace the JSON file with your backed up copy to restore your sites?
Yes.
Yes, the answer is yes. Just once again, make sure that you've stopped all your services and closed down desktop server.
Correct, correct.
And now that I have said that Dave and Steve are available, Adam has to ask if Steve wears boxers or briefs. Of course, that would be Adam. Yeah, don't act naive, Adam. We know you better than that. Is there a way to speed up the server?
The server regarding Apache server?
You know, John, I guess the question, there's a few questions. One is, it depends on, when you say speed up the server, you're running on Mac, I believe. And I'm wondering if the issue is just when you've created a local site, if things slow down, or if everything is running slow. If you've created a site and that site is running slow, you might try using the airplane mode plugin and see if it's just doing an overabundance of internet calls, slowing it down. Okay, desktop server, every time I submit a change, it takes a long time.
We would want to, I guess the next question would be, is if you started up a brand new desktop server site with no plugins or anything, is it snappy?
Right, yeah, yeah.
when is that occurring? And then there's some other things that we can always suggest is we find that as far as speed goes is if folks are running a third-party antivirus, that can slow things down, especially on Windows, for example.
Yeah. And that's, that's a good point is most people running Macs do not have antivirus turned on by default. But there is the ability to have antivirus on a Mac. But with Windows, it can actually slow things down considerably, especially if you have real-time scanning going. If you don't predefine directories that you don't want to be scanned, what's happening is that Windows, with its operating system and its disk access, is constantly churning, looking at those files. And WordPress, as we all know, has like a bajillion files, and they're all very small. And so if Windows is constantly checking those files for viruses every time you create a site, it's really going to slow your system down. So one thing that you can do to avoid that is if you have your websites directory, say in your documents/websites directory or wherever you store your websites, if you set that up as a directory that you do not want to be scanned, then your virus scanning software will skip scanning that constantly. Of course, the disadvantage of that is sometimes if you, for instance, are pulling a website down from live and importing it, there might be a virus on that, and Windows is not going to scan that. But I will tell you that virus scanning software can slow down local development quite a bit if you have those files constantly being real-time scanned. Do we have any other questions? Feature requests. Sort list of local environments by most recent.
On the roadmap.
Yeah, that is on the roadmap. That's from Adam. So, okay. I don't know that we have a lot of questions. I think that Greg, you covered it pretty well. Does anyone have any other questions that are related to desktop server or WP Site Sync? We'll be happy to answer those.
Sean mentions he's getting a bunch of PHP errors. It can, Sean, the question I guess I would ask is, do you have debug and trace turned on, that plugin, debug and trace? If you do, turn that off, and you won't see the errors in most cases. Can you get PHP errors running on 7 versus 5? Yes, absolutely. It would be interesting. If you're seeing a lot of errors that you don't want to see, you could definitely send that archive in to me, and I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, sometimes we found that things like that are theme or plugin related, but it's all, we like to look at those archives to kind of get an idea of what's going on. Steve says sorting for now. We'll change that to alphabetical. Your request is sort from newest to oldest would be nice. A date column. Actually, that would be a great idea to have a date column on that. And did you show, Greg, I might have missed it, how in the preferences file that actually controls your list on your local host page?
I think I mentioned it, but okay. Maybe explain this clearly.
Will desktop server be at WordCamp US? We do plan to be there, yes. And we're going to be, like I said, at Riverside, and maybe one or two between now and the end of the year. We do plan to ramp up our WordCamps next year, though. So you will see us at more WordCamps next year. Anything else? I think that is all the questions. I'm trying to scroll back and see if there's anything else, but I don't see any other questions. So, oh, let's see. Yeah, so John asked twice. I'm sorry, John, that I missed your question on the server earlier in the cast. Sometimes we get so carried away with getting everything going that I'm not paying attention to the actual chat screen. Anyway.
John just asked, I often shut down without stopping DS. Will this break things? That's a good question for Steve. I don't think so.
Yeah, yeah, it should be fine. Thanks, John. We try. We try to have good answers. Sometimes our answers are I don't know, but we try. Yeah, it's kind of like, I would say it's probably similar to unplugging an external drive from your Mac without ejecting it first. The odds are really, really, really good you're not going to lose any data, but it's probably still best first practice to actually stop all the services before you shut it down.
But just to remember that I sometimes explain this a lot. It's like basically there's two parts to desktop server. There's the application of desktop server, and then there is the services. And you can, with the application, you can open the application, of course, create a website. You can make, you can remove, you can do a job is to do, and the server running kind of background.
Good. And Greg is breaking up. The database archive utility also backs up your JSON file, I believe. And so you'll have that there. If you use a data, I highly recommend, Dave Jesh wrote the database archive utility, and that thing is really awesome for keeping all your data intact. You can set it up, and the only key is that you just have to have a desktop server running once you set up your preferences for that, and it will automatically back up your database on whatever schedule you put it. So, you know, and you can also tell the database archive utility where you want to save those files. So it's a good general practice. Set it up, automate it, just have desktop server running, and your databases will all get backed up along with your preferences file. And I think we might have lost Greg. Did we lose you? No?
I don't think so.
Oh, okay. Greg, you froze up for a minute, and then so I started talking.
You said I was getting glitchy.
Yeah, you were getting a little bit glitchy, but at least we don't hear tree trimming in the background. So
there you go.
All right. So if there are no other questions, I think that wraps up another episode. Of course, you can always contact us by sending us emails at support@serverpress.com and looking us up and finding us, and we look forward to hearing from you guys. And thanks again for joining us. And with that, I think we are done.
Bye.
Goodbye.